Tony, is Charlie? All right.
No? Good morning. I will call to order the agenda briefing meeting for the Wilmington City Council on Tuesday, January 18th. And note that obviously the mayor is not here. He's out of town on business, but will be at the meeting this evening. So, on to our agenda. We have several presentations this evening, and then the consent agenda. C1 is the approval of the minutes of the agenda briefing.
Don't you have to do a roll call,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. I appreciate that. I better do that. Councilmember Rivenbark. Here. Councilmember Anderson.
Here.
Mr. Barnett. Mr. Spears.
Here.
And Mr. Waddell. And the mayor, as we said, is absent, and the mayor pro tem is in the room. Thank you for reminding me. We're back to C1. That's the minutes for the regular meeting and the agenda briefing. And C2 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to apply for a 2021 Assistance to Firefighters grant in the amount of $38,699 to be matched with local funds in the amount of $3,870. That will come from the general fund. Next, we have public hearings. PH1 is an ordinance directing the housing inspector to vacate, close, and repair or demolish the dwelling at 4924 Park Avenue as unfit for human habitation pursuant to Article 5, Chapter 16 of the City Code, and directing that a notice be placed thereon prohibiting its use or occupancy. PH2 is an ordinance amending the official zoning map of the city to rezone property containing 14.85 acres of land located at 5026 Oleander Drive from Community Business Conditional District to New Community Business Conditional District to allow for a commercial district's mixed-use development. Yes, Mr. Anderson.
Who's in charge of this one? Brian? Pretty large file, so if I missed something, I apologize, but I tried. I assume or presume that the commercial part is up where the parking is along the front of the Oleander, correct?
Yeah, it's going to be at the northeast corner where the new light's going to be.
First floor only?
Yes.
Okay. The other one was, different people that present to us do better jobs of, the visuals. Is the buffer yard being left, basically, like, I guess I'm asking, is the vegetation that exists that's not inside their building envelope being left?
They're required to have buffers along the properties adjacent to the golf course and adjacent to the single family to the south. Whatever trees are in that buffer have to remain. They can't touch them. Now, if they go beyond that, they're not showing it on the plan. That'd be a question for the applicant, but they're required to keep it in the buffers that are required by the code.
So if there's any trees, anything, basically, you're saying they leave there?
Right.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I do have one quick question. Staff had both modest support and non-support under the infill and redevelopment section for, as 1.11.13. What is that? Why would it be both support and non-support? Just out of curiosity.
We generally do that when there's parts of the policy that support it and parts of it don't. So if it's not cut and dry, we kind of say, well, it does meet that part, but it doesn't meet the other. In this case, let me pull it up so I can speak to it specifically. You said a 111.
111.13, I believe. Or maybe 3, yeah.
Right. So in this case, the desired character of the surrounding area is kind of a subjective term. So it does meet access to goods and services and amenities, but the level to which it satisfies the policy is kind of balanced out. So it's not a full support or full non-support, but we think it was relevant to this case, so we wanted to make sure it was in the case summary. And actually, you guys weigh it as part of your decision making.
It was just a point of clarification. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Charlie, did you have something?
I don't know if this question should be directed at you or traffic or whatever, but I live on Pine Street, which runs parallel to Oleander, and a lot of the neighbors have contacted me concerned that the traffic signal there, the Elks Club that will facilitate this development, is going to encourage people to go across Oleander into the neighborhood. Pine Street's a relatively quiet street. Park Avenue is there some way, and here again, this may be for traffic, to let the people access that stoplight, but make it left turn or right turn instead of going across into the single-family neighborhood?
Again, I'd probably have to defer to traffic on
Okay,
that.
that's good.
I have to look at the patterns, and they look when they put these signals in, they look at the distributions and how many trips are going to go left, right, straight.
Well, I've never seen eye to eye with traffic before, and I don't know why I would this time, but I'd like to hear that.
Okay, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. PH3 is an ordinance amending the official zoning map of the city to rezone property containing 2.0 acres of land located at 5823 Oleander Drive, 126 Seabrill Avenue, and a portion of 122 Seabrill Avenue from community business and R15 residential to community business conditional district for an assembly hall and a retail sales establishment. Mr. Anderson?
Brian, I guess it's not unique, but it's somewhat unique. And it's more of a big picture question than minutia on this project. You have that, a city and regional planning theory kind of class. If you can take me to one of those real quick. Like that triangle that's out in front of it. If somebody can pull up not Dylan can pull up the triangle, I guess it's a car lot now. It's a little triangle out on Oleander that's not part of the rezoning.
Right.
I remember in time, the only one I can really come up with is at some point we were up where the highway patrol station is behind, I think there's a couple developments off of military that Maynard's company did. And we talked, and our prior director talked about, how he'd like things done in inclusive, all inclusively, and sometimes projects were not appropriate if they were, they weren't, they were spotty or whatever, and left things that would be eyesores for years. So I guess, long story short, right there where it says existing CB, does it concern the planning department at all that that's just going to be left and that it's really useless?
I don't know that it's useless. I think there is a current use. I think.
Yeah, but
I think you spoke to it earlier. Obviously we prefer to have a comprehensive look at all the parcels assembled together to see a more comprehensive look of how that corridor is going to look. In this case, we can't do that because they don't own all those properties.
But does it get a negative score at all from you for that? There's no mention of it that I saw.
Yeah, I don't know that we give a negative score for what happens to the remnant. That's something we can talk about as staff. I don't know that we've discussed that at this point.
Well, I guess my concern is, that's, I don't know where it ranks, but it's one of our major thoroughfares. And
Right.
we talk about trying to beautify the city and trying to give a cohesive look with our zoning. And you're right, yeah, there's about 12 cars there and 3 boats. But I mean, I'm not sure that's what I want the city of Wilmington to have there for the next 40 years. And I don't know what could go there. I'm just trying to think through that. But you guys in general do not weigh that in your decisions.
It depends on the situation. In this case, I don't think we did. I think obviously we'd love to see a redevelopment of that whole block. I mean, it would make it look nice considering the investment that's occurred on either side of it. But unless the applicant can bring it forward, we really can't consider it.
But
I don't know. I don't know if there's an easy answer for that.
No, there's not. I'm just curious if you evaluate that at all when you're sitting there saying we're for or against this project.
In this case, we did not.
Any other concerns? PH4 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into contract change order number 2 for the fiscal year 22 sidewalk rehabilitation contract in the amount of $423,989 with Jimco Construction Company of Smithfield, North Carolina. On to ordinances. 01 is an ordinance reducing the speed limit from 35 to 25 miles per hour along streets in the Clearbrook neighborhood. 02 is an ordinance appropriating $100,000 from the North Carolina League of Municipalities annual conference hosted by the city of Wilmington. 03 is an ordinance appropriating funds for the Legion Stadium concrete repairs project in the amount of $91,512. Yes, sir?
Committee. Who's on this burger?
Christine Sims.
Christine, could you just elaborate on the pieces that we had to value out, if you will, that we had to put off till later?
There were two items that were recommended by the engineer. They were exterior waterproofing, which we will try to get to, but that's kind of not a safety issue and a safety concern. We're focusing all of the main work that we're doing now on the items that are either safety issues or they're related to the Florence's damages underneath that we need to be able to repair in order to satisfy our FEMA requirement. So right now, there's nothing that's safety related or anything of a concern. It's more aesthetics that are being postponed until we get through this project, and then we'll go back and get those handled.
Where's the waterproofing? I guess is it just
The
general
outside
concrete?
edge of the stucco, so almost like paint on the outside.
And this is on what part, on the outside?
The bleachers.
The backside and,
Yes, sir.
okay.
Yes, sir. They will repair all the missing stucco. If you're familiar and been out to the facility, you know there's some big chunks of stucco missing. All of that will be repaired and patched. That's part of the project. But the final thing is just to go back once that's done and then give it a good waterproof or a waterproof paint type of application to it to make it basically look a little prettier.
So you feel like, I mean, is that I guess my concern is we do this repair and then we don't do the waterproofing for 5 years and then we're right back where we started. So I'm just is that something you feel like we'll get to next year? Or?
Absolutely, yes, sir. I don't see that there'll be a very long extension for that project once we get past this part. But in talking with the engineer, it was not something that was safety related. We really focused on making sure we don't want to miss anything that's related to the safety or the actual structural integrity of the building. All of that is being covered in the project.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. We have the next ordinance is 04A and B is related. 04A is the ordinance making supplemental appropriation to the Special Purpose Fund to upgrade video and audio equipment for the Sting Center, utilizing up to $50,000 in federal forfeiture revenue. And 04B is the resolution authorizing the city manager to apply for the Governor's Crime Commission Local Law Enforcement Block Grant in the amount of $24,500. On to resolutions. R1 is a resolution to withdraw previous request for proposals to redevelop city-owned property located at 1110 Castle Street and to direct staff to develop a new request for proposals. Mr. Waddell.
I wasn't here for the original RFP, so I guess my question to staff is, will we just revert back to the original RFP, or will we be developing a?
You have your mic on.
I guess my question is, would we be developing a wholly new RFP, or we would just be reverting back to the original request?
The answer is yes, but Aubrey Parsley will answer the question for you.
It might be helpful to give him broad strokes of where this has been, if you recall, because it's getting some age on it.
I haven't been here for the entire history.
I'm familiar with the
project.
history.
Okay.
My question is more on if we need to go back and rewrite the entire proposal, or if we can just utilize the existing proposal, or the previous proposal that we had.
I think we'll be able to reutilize some aspects of the previous 2019 RFP, but we've learned an awful lot about the property since then, so it'll be a heavy makeover of the RFP. There'll be, if we were to redo it with council's vote to do so, it would be, we'd add a lot of specificity and provide some more concrete guidance on what the city would consider for the property and what the objectives and goals are.
Prior to voting on that, will we have some idea of what the major guidelines for the new RFP would be?
So
Our intent would be to bring the draft RFP back to you for approval before it goes out, so you'll have an opportunity to see it ahead of time. But we do not intend to provide details for tomorrow night or tonight's meeting unless you want those, and then we'll.
This is just a vote to go ahead and get you guys to go start working on the draft.
Yes, sir.
Understood.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Robert
Well-
Mark, did you? Okay,
Go ahead, sir.
I think we're good. Thank you.
No, wait.
Oh, okay. We can't see you, so please break
It's-
in.
It's okay, Margaret. You can never see me on the agenda briefing. Tony,
Yes, sir.
I heard what you just said, but I think it would make more sense since we're going into redrafting this RFP. Wouldn't you want to get the wishes of council so we don't go back into the weeds like we just did with Mr. Hip on an RFP, or whomever accepts this RFP or we grant this RFP to? So I think you should try to get the direction that council wants to go with this thing so we can get it done, if that makes sense, instead of it being a reactive measure from council.
So you're asking that council come prepared tonight to provide input on the draft that we would be putting together? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, it doesn't have to be tonight, but it should be before. When is the draft is coming to? I thought this is just a request to say, hey, we want to. Hold on, let me look so I can get this right.
The intent is to ask for you to dismiss the previously submitted proposals in association with the previous RFP. The staff would then go back and try to put together an RFP that is based upon the directives that council gave earlier, but reflects the information that we've learned over the course of the past 2 years, and then bring that back to you for your review and input, and then we would revise that for it to go out.
Okay, so right there. So not tonight, but in between the revising of the draft
Yes, sir.
from staff, just some input, maybe a call or email to the council members to say, hey, what do you think about this? Or what's your thought of the new RFP?
Very good.
That's the direction I'm thinking.
Yes, sir. That will be very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Aubrey. R2 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to request additional STB BGP-DA funding from the Wilmington Urban Area Metropolitan Planning Organization in the amount of $2,400,000 with a required $600,000 local grant match from the city for the Hooker Road multi-use path, Hinton Avenue multi-use path, and the Wrightsville Avenue and Greenville Avenue intersection improvement projects. Mr. Rivenbark?
Excuse me. With regard to the crossing of Oleander Drive at Greenville Loop, Greenville Avenue, are we working with, I know the developer along there has been required to do so much, and also recently when we went on a tour of the I-140 military cutoff extension, I was talking on the bus for 2 hours with some of the people who, much like our people, they plan these deals. And there seems to be 3 different entities that are concerned with that crossing. And one said that one of us is going to do something and it's going to turn around and be torn right out and done again. And that just doesn't sit right with me. Can you elaborate on that? Or if you're not prepared to this morning, Tony, I don't want to see us throw money down a rat hole. Or any of the 3 of us.
Yes, sir. I agree, and your observation is a good one. We did meet with Representative Ted Davis regarding the developer's concerns that he is going to be putting in improvements there at that intersection that will then be modified by a later NCDOT agreement. And improvements to that area. And then, of course, we're going to have the Cross-City Trail in that area as well. So we are in the early stages of discussing, trying to coordinate. The problem is NCDOT's project, I believe, is set for 2029. And so moving that forward would be somewhat of a difficulty, but we are in discussions with them to try to eliminate duplication and tearing up of others' work.
Okay, I was not, okay, that's fine. Thank you. Are we done with the meeting?
No. R3 is a resolution calling for the ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment, and that's sponsored by myself. And then reports, RP1 is...
Margaret, can you educate me? Embarrassed to say, North Carolina's never passed it, I would presume, or we wouldn't be voting on it.
No. I was asked several years ago about the League of Women Voters about doing this, and there's just a movement to bring this back up again because other states have ratified this.
Are we one of them is my question.
No, I don't believe we are.
No, we are not.
Said there were 30 or something.
That's why this is
3
happening
passed today.
throughout the state,
Okay.
is that people are trying to encourage, this is simply to try to encourage the General Assembly to ratify that. And then RP1 is the Council's Appointments Committee for Boards and Commissions, and that presentation will be by Mr. Rivenbark, the chair. And that ends our agenda. Mr. City Manager, Mr. Rivenbark?
I'd like to revisit PH3. Give me, I let it slip by me.
All right, you want me to read that again?
No,
Okay.
Well, if you
No,
feel like you
I'm
need to. Who is, I think we all received a rather lengthy email from a gentleman who was a little bit put out at the way the process went.
Yes.
I'm sure he didn't single me out.
What have we got?
Okay. Meredith, are you the one that sits in on the Planning Commission? Okay. Did you see the email that I'm referring to? Okay. I'll make sure you get it today. I'd just like to have, there's always at least 2 sides to every story, but I find after 20 years up here, there's sometimes 3 and 4 and 5. And I just like, before any of us respond, I'd just like to hear some of the concerns that he raised. That's all. And then the other, this is for Ms. Penny, with the way that the meeting has gotten skewed a little bit with the observance of the holiday yesterday. The public speakers, has there been any kind of a wrinkle? Does that throw a fly in the ointment when they try to sign to speak up?
The deadline will be today at 12 noon.
Okay.
And it is included in the ad that I have to submit, the deadline. So they have until 12 noon today to sign up.
I'm through.
Just remind me, I think the rule on notifying people is 300 feet, is that right, or what is it these days? That may be more of a,
Mr. Anderson, you're correct. In our code, it's 300 feet. State law just requires adjacents to be notified, but our code has adopted 300 feet. That's
and that
correct.
goes across streets and all that, right?
In all directions, 300 feet from the boundary of the property.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
While you're up there, can I ask you, having done some of these things on the other side of that podium, it was always put on the back of the person, the applicant, to come up with a list of all the people. Is that still the case?
Let me have Brian answer that. I believe that's correct, but I don't want to give you bad information.
Okay, here he comes.
Mr. Rivenbark, in the past, the applicant was providing that list, and then staff would verify it based on a list we created. Recently, since we're duplicating work, staff has just been providing a list to the applicant because we'd be doing it anyways. In this case, it went out 300 feet, and I think there was a discretion between who was the address for the Property Owners Association for, I believe, I haven't seen the email. I'm assuming we're talking about
Seabrook.
What's the name of the little compact, little cluster development that it's up on Seabrook? Regardless, it went to the HOA because the common area is within 300 feet. Not all the property owners were, but there was a discretion between where that mailing address was for that POA. And we went back and forth trying to find out who got what, and our records, from what we saw, were correct. So I'll be happy to speak that tonight and try
I'm not, honest engine, I wasn't talking about that specific one. I was just kind of asking a general question about notifications. And while you bring that up, it's interesting because, I do that in my business a lot, looking up who owns what and everything, and I'll find somebody that owns it that lives in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and there's a tenant in that space. And I don't know how you would go out and find the name of every renter in a given 300-foot radius of the subject property. So I think that's where some of the heartache or the heartburn comes. I didn't get notified. Well, the owner of your dwelling got notified. So I don't know how you do it. And we did go to links. One time we had properties that had maybe 2 frontages, and we put a rezoning or a conditional CP or SP sign on it, but not on the other. Now I think we've taken care of that by making sure that signage can be seen by everybody. But the situation that I just was talking about, I don't know how you would fix that.
Right, and that's why we have multiple means of getting the word out. We got notice in the paper, we've got mailers that go out 300 feet now, we got signs on the property. We're doing what we can, but we're open to suggestions to make improvements always.
I think you're doing everything you can.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mr. City Manager, I believe that concludes the business, initial business anyway, of the agenda briefing. Do we have other business before us this morning?
Yes, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, we have an update today for you on the operation of the Live Oak Bank Pavilion at Riverfront Park. If you'll note that Tom Moten sent to you a written update from Amy Beatty, who is stranded outside of the area, I think in the mountains of western North Carolina, and it was unable to get here today. So she has provided her comments in writing. And then we also have a representative of Live Nation here today to provide you a report from Live Nation's perspective with regard to the operation of the amphitheater.
Great, thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Welcome.
My name is Ryan Belcher. I'm the market GM here in Wilmington for Live Nation, for Live Oak Bank and Greenfield Amphitheater. So I've been asked to give you guys an update about the first season that we've had here. And go over our 2022 projections, and then some of the challenges that we faced. I don't want to highlight those too much. I'd like to talk about our wins more than those. So let's start with our challenges. Obviously, we opened a venue during a national or a global pandemic. I don't need to stress to anyone in here what that entails and all the stuff that goes into that. And we weren't immune to supply chain issues or staffing here in Wilmington either for our venues. Not as much as the other bigger markets in North Carolina. Often we ended up busing some of our staff to Wilmington, or excuse me, to Raleigh, Charlotte to help out there. So we were fortunate on that, but again, supply chain issues, we're still waiting on some equipment for our venue. So that was definitely a challenge this past year. And then there was the unknown of our first season. We didn't know how people were going to gravitate once they got into the venue. We really didn't know which way they were going to come down to the venue, load in, load out, and then the uniqueness of this property, right? We're very, very close to residents here. We have water on one complete side of us, which poses all kinds of stuff with weather. And then we did a complete season, 23 shows if you include the Azalea Fest, in really half the amount of time we normally would, right? So those were some of the bigger challenges that we had this year. Some of our successes is we safely put 110,000 fans that came to see 19 headliners over 24 dates this year. 41% of them, of the ticket holders, were from Wilmington. The rest were from outside markets. We sold 26 tickets in Alaska this past year. People are coming from all over, hundreds of different markets, zip codes came to see shows here, which tells us a couple things. One, obviously, the power of music and the headliner's ability to get people here. And then Wilmington, it spoke for itself. People loved coming here. The venue was received great from artists, from crew, from guests. I mean, you name it. We had a lot of positive things this past year. The economic impact for Wilmington, I hope everyone here noticed on show nights the amount of people that came in town, the inability to get a table at some restaurants, hotels were booked. It was great. Live Nation, us, hired about 385 people this past season. Granted, most of them were part-time. Our direct concessionaire was another 235. So roughly 620 people were hired with us this past year, and that again was just directly at our venue. But our caterer, our laundry, our cleaning crew, tent rentals, staffing agencies, food trucks were all local companies that benefited from this venue this past year. And then we can't forget about Greenfield Lake. We did another 18,000 people that came and saw shows there. We have a capital expenditure project going on right now. And really, the smaller venues lets us cultivate artists and crews and our staff, and hopefully some of these artists that were playing Greenfield Lake this past year, we'll see them at Live Oak here in a couple years. I'd like to highlight our sustainability program. So our goal is to reduce as much concert waste as possible and our carbon footprint and divert as much waste from our landfills as we possibly could during our season. So nationwide, out of every single venue in our portfolio, Wilmington's 2 venues, Greenfield Lake finished 3rd in our company, and Live Oak Bank finished 5th. For Greenfield Lake, we were able to divert almost 80% of the waste out of the landfill, and it's either recyclable, compost, donations, whatever it may be, and Live Oak Bank was 68%. So a couple of the stats that go into that, we recycled almost 25 tons at Live Oak Bank. We sent compost material almost 3.5 tons. Even though it is a no smoking venue and area, we picked up 4,165 cigarette butts throughout the season. We count them, we keep them, we recycle them, we monitor all that. We have a team that's their only job is sustainability of about 8 people. Most of them are UNC Wilmington college kids, and they're super passionate about this. They go through the trash, they collect donations. We were able to donate 518 pounds worth of lost and found items, stuff that people had left behind that no one claimed. We also teamed up with 8 different local nonprofits, including Nourish NC, POP, Cape Fear River Watch, and that obviously got them tremendous amount of exposure for their cause throughout that. And they were obviously able to collect donations. At Greenfield Lake, we recycled 1,350 cigarette butts, recycled almost 9,000 pounds, and only put less than 3,000 pounds towards the landfill. So that's a big initiative for us, and I obviously wanted to highlight the importance of the sustainability program for Live Nation and our team here. The city has absolutely built a beautiful venue, right? We collectively put our best foot forward. Live Nation, the artists want to come here, they want to play here. We're in a unique position. We have more artists and bands that want to come to Wilmington than available slots, than available dates. So one of the asks for me coming here today is to request that permission to do more shows in 2022 coming up. Can I answer any questions?
Yes, Mr. Barnett?
Quick question, since you mentioned more shows. What's the process of selecting groups to come?
Yeah, that's done through Grant, our talent buyer. He spoke to this council before, I believe. And basically, he will reach out, or bands will reach out to him, and they'll select dates and put in holds. And depending on how many holds are on a date, then challenges come in. So really, it's based off of routing. Touring is obviously very cyclical. They might be playing in Charlotte and want to come to Wilmington. There's a lot of variables that go into that.
Okay. And then I guess the other question is, a Live Nation's venue had the Stampede, and the people died. It wasn't here in Wilmington. It was in, I can't remember where
Houston.
it was. Houston. What are we doing to make sure that doesn't happen here?
We train extensively. I can't get into too much on Astro World, obviously. There's ongoing investigations with that. But we have show stop procedures. We train our staff. That was comparing apples to oranges on certain things. As far as the crowd, the demographic, the size of the concert. I mean, there's a bunch of different things that go into that. But we train extensively on that.
Mr. Wandale?
As a follow-up to Councilman Barnett's question about the Astroworld incident, I see a note from the email that we got that they're looking at reducing the Wilmington Police Department officers at events. After 1 year, I would like to see some more information from the police department on why we would be pulling officers out of there, especially if we're going to be increasing concerts. Seems a little bit premature in my opinion, and I'd just like to see a little more information on that before we made a unilateral decision for the 2022 season.
Yeah, absolutely. We can get you guys comparable data on other venues similar to ours. Obviously, if there was a show where the police department, council, or myself thought that there was security issues, we would up that number. We're fortunate that the shows we're doing here, especially this past season and this one coming up, we're fairly laid back. We had no issues at Harry Connick Jr., Trevor Noah, or really any of the shows. We did this whole season without incident, which is our goal every year.
That's the goal, right? So,
Councilmember Waddell, this report was just provided this morning. I haven't had an opportunity to speak with the chief about it. His conversations with me earlier about this has been that there were at times too many police officers without much to do, and so they could augment the public forces with the private security folks, but let us get further information for you on that. The second thing I'd say about it is that staffing in the department is difficult right now, and that there are folks who just don't want to work those concerts because it's overtime for them, and it's almost too much overtime. And then the third thing I'd say is that the additional concert venues that have been requested by Live Nation are currently under consideration. They can be authorized by me under contract. I asked for additional information about the cross-referencing of departmental supplies and services to be provided before we authorize that, simply to make sure that our folks were talking to one another and everybody knew what was going on.
excellent. Thank you for that.
Yeah, in our first year, we purposely went heavy on the numbers that we would normally have for police per artist, or excuse me, per fan.
Okay, and just one other, this is a different section, but you said so 60% of the ticket sales last year were outside of ILM? Mm-hmm. That's excellent. Do we anticipate that trend continuing? Is that something you see in similar markets?
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. Anderson?
And some of this probably may or may not apply. It might be more of a Tony question. But I can't even remember how many shows I went there, but I don't know, 6, 7 at least. So, and I'm guilty. I'm looking at that bullet point 1, 2, 3. Number 3, with the drop-offs. And I don't know if I just missed the signage or what. I'm trying to figure out why that is a bad place for somebody to pull over and let someone out real quick.
Are we talking about Front and Harnett Street? The corner there?
Why, what's the hill, Cowan?
Cowan is the one near Flats on Front and Sawmill.
Yeah.
We do not let people be dropped off over there. That's not something, so our geofencing for Uber and Lyft is further down at the lot across from PPD on the other side of Front. The problem is the Uber drivers and Lyft drivers just know this area, right? So they know they can drop off people quickly, but we don't.
Well, I'm in the 41%, so I mean, I have my daughter drop me off. So,
Yeah.
I mean, so where?
So
There needs to be
60%
some
of
better signage or something, because I never picked up on at all that that there's only one place to drop off.
Yeah, we can obviously increase the amount of signage.
And I
up
would
at the
think
front
it'd
there,
be
no
better to
problem.
have more than one, because you're going to create a bottleneck.
Yeah, the
Where
traffic
is it
is very
supposed-
unique for this property, without a
Yeah,
doubt.
you only got to get in on one side. So where is it now?
The lot across from PPD off of Front.
So you want
that's where-
everyone to cross that street.
No, that's where we have Uber and Lyft drop off. What we're finding is 60% of the people are walking from downtown, where they're getting dinner, cocktails ahead of time, and then walking down Nut Street. And then 40% of the people are coming down Harnett, and the only people coming from Cowan or down Cowan are VIP, and then we allow the residents for Sawmill and Flats on Front to enter that location as well.
Still, you want people to be dropped off
I want people to be dropped.
across the street from PPD.
Correct.
Okay.
And I can add more signage for next season
Okay.
easily.
And there's you have people or help people get across the street there? I mean, the natural tendency is to let yourself off on the side of the road that.
Correct.
Not to, let's go on the other side of the road. I mean, that's just not a natural tendency.
Correct. So I have my staff, and then we have the sheriff's department that works traffic for us when they can fill the calls, because they had staffing issues as well this past season. So we keep staff on Front and Cowan, on Front and Harnett, and Brunswick and Nutt to try to mitigate any issues coming in, more so for educational pieces of it, all the fans coming, because they always have, if they have a big backpack that we don't allow in, we try to catch that early. So we do have people at those 3 locations with sheriffs who also put cars there as well.
So when you mention more shows, what are you asking for?
I'm asking for 30 shows, not including fixed civic events.
What is have you requested any, I mean, I don't recall, Tony, if we have, I think when you start talking about that, the issue really becomes more of how much you're going to stack them, to me.
Yes.
Because if you put, 3 and 4 in a row, that becomes problematic for the people that live around there. And I don't know if that's in the contract. It clearly is not, because we had multiple times where there were 3 shows in a row.
That was
So-
just Yes, sir. That
So
was
I'm
this
just saying,
past
if
season.
you had 30, but you didn't have them, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, where they're really spread out, that probably works. But that isn't how the concert schedule always works. So I think that's where the balancing act comes in.
Yeah, absolutely. And then this past year, we did our first show July 16th, and we ended in October with a show.
Compressed
didn't
nature
happen,
of it.
so-
I'm just, regardless, even if it was, from
Correct.
October to, people that live there don't want to have to endure, 3, 4 shows in a row.
Correct.
So-
Any other questions, concerns? Yes, Mr. Barnett.
You mentioned when you started that you like to talk about like your wins, and you really don't want to focus on your losses. But help me with asking this question. What were your major challenges?
Yeah, my major challenges for this were obviously, like I said, we did a compressed season. So our staff, we were there almost 24/7 for weeks on end. It was a new season. And then ingress with this property, it took us a couple shows to really get that dialed in, to get people in quickly once we found out that, again, 60% were coming from this way. Managing the Riverwalk aspect of it was something that took us a minute to get in the flow with residents and everyone else. Obviously, we spoke on COVID. There wasn't a single challenge that we didn't learn something with and that we just said, nah, we're just going to roll with it. We made adjustments and we'll continue to do that throughout this year. But really, those were our biggest challenges, was the unknown of our first season.
All right.
Okay, we
He
still have questions.
reminded me of a question.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I recall, at first the Riverwalk entrance was kind of a secret, and everybody was like, "Oh, great, this is another place to get in," because it was, especially with the first concert series, people would get there. That particular artist draws people that got there awfully early.
Yes.
I hope the plan is to keep that option and not just have one entrance. Is that the plan or not?
So the plan is always going to be use Riverwalk to some capacity. We had 2 shows of multiple night runs, Widespread Panic and Grizz. So what we found is, especially with 60% of the people coming from other areas, they don't necessarily know about they know about the Riverwalk, but they didn't know about the ingress piece of it, right? So on the second and third night of those multiple night runs, everyone got wise to that area. They could be on the Riverwalk. There was a nice breeze. It was beautiful to watch the boats go by. And then that's when that area, we saw a run on that and it got loaded up.
Simpler question. Are you going to have more than one entrance?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr.
I got a
Robert.
question. Hold on. My hand's been up for a minute, Mayor Pro Tem. I don't know if you've seen
We
it or
can't
not.
see that, just so you know.
Oh, okay. Well, sorry. Sorry, Charlie. I will be quick. Let me piggyback off of Luke's question about the downsizing of WPD presence there. Are we looking into the options of hiring a private security firm?
I have my own security, and if for some reason the police department said, hey guys, we're light on this, we have something else going on, I would increase my number. I will not do a show that I don't feel is done safely.
Well, I know I've heard some expressions from our residents, talking about the presence of, the lack of presence on the streets when a concert is going on, and plus we're down a few number of officers, so just asking.
Yeah, I probably couldn't speak to the lack of presence out on the street, more so just in the park.
Yeah, that wasn't for you.
Okay.
Councilmember Spears, if you'd like, I can have Tom Moten, Deputy City Manager, comment on that. The police chief, Amy Beatty, and he have had conversations about the security issue, if you'd like to have him comment on that.
Well, sure, Tom. Come on up.
Thank you.
Well, that, before you leave, sir, excuse me, Tom, I've been trying to make a statement.
Yes.
We knew that we were going to, this is a tight space. We know that. And I am just amazed at how smooth it's gone year one with all the unknowns and these problems that come up. We expect them. And the one that, and you guys, this is what you do. Y'all are the pros at this. But the one thing that kind of needs a lot of attention is handicap. I have a handicapped son, and he just loves that. And he's wheelchair bound. So drop him off, he's stuck there till I can go all the way to the parking deck and then take 15, 20, 30 minutes to get back to him. And he's okay, but that's the one thing that I want to see some discussion about and how we can make that better. And a lot of that's on us, not on you. But I think y'all are doing a great job, and
Appreciate that.
It really is. It's our reputation's out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Bands and artists want to come here.
Yeah. Thank
which is
you.
amazing.
That's great. Before you leave, would you remind us of your name and
Yeah,
title?
Ryan Belcher, and I'm the general manager for Live Nation.
And maybe you should just hang close in
Yeah,
case
of
there are
course.
questions after Mr. Moten.
Amy Beatty and I met with Chief Williams regarding security, and the first thing I want to emphasize is that maintaining a safe venue is paramount. Secondarily, as City Manager Cottle indicated, COVID fatigue, staffing are major challenges right now. But the driving motivation also was to ensure that we're utilizing WPD resources in the most effective manner, and part of it is looking at a partnership. So our discussion was maintaining the 10 officers per concert in general, and 50% would be augmented by Live Nation. And so that's the process we're working through. And at the same time, Live Nation has been really good at coordinating with the chief that if there's a particular concert that is highly suspected of maybe having a different demographic that may be more active, then we re-examine the deployment of resources. For instance, Neil Sedaka concert, I mean, you would pretty much think a sedate group may require less. So the focus, again, is on maintaining safety, but also the chief wanted to make sure that he had resources deployed around the venue as well.
Tom, don't be surprised by old people now. They can get their heels up.
I'm a Neil Sedaka fan, too, you know. And we are working on some long-term strategies for ADA. We do want to make ADA accessibility. I know that Deputy City Attorney Meredith Everhart's working with a nearby property owner to get something closer that could be designated for the venue, and coordination would be with Live Nation.
Great, thank you. Questions, Mr. Anderson?
Tom, I don't know what the name of the theory is, but it's out. It exists. It felt like to me. I mean, I parked here one time and walked, clean all the way back here, both ways, and having that many more people just out seems to make things safer, versus one person walking down an empty sidewalk. It's just kind of safety in numbers kind of thing and activity. But I'm curious, do we have any numbers yet on, I guess this would fall into the, how we do the police do the zones. I think one's the CBD and one's the, whatever the other one they call it, out inside of it, wherever this falls inside their demographic. We have any numbers on that for last year yet? I'm just wondering if this affected it, is what I'm getting at. If the police department has any data or feels that this was an issue. Mine's anecdotal. I didn't think it was. I mean, you might have had some intoxicated people walking the street, but I'm talking more about like muggings, robbery, things like that where you're in harm's way and you're not doing anything. Has that changed the figures or the?
I think I could answer that, but I think it'd be better if Chief Williams at a future meeting came in and responded to that or provided a report. I was looking to see if he's here.
Tom, let me interrupt. Chief Williams is scheduled to do crime statistics review for you prior to the next or after the next agenda briefing, I believe. But in an upcoming meeting, I'll make sure he's prepared for that question as well.
Any other questions, concerns? Great, thank you.
Brian.
Oops, wait.
One more, Brian. This is Brian.
Thanks.
You mentioned that you get a lot of help from UNCW. You get a lot of kids from UNCW to help with the picking up cigarette butts and stuff. I guess my question is, how do other people get jobs there?
What was the question? I couldn't.
How do other people get jobs there?
Yeah, we're going to do a job fair in mid-February, again, to gear up for our season. We're going to do our first show at Greenfield Lake, and we share the staff, Greenfield and Live Oak Bank. So we'll start gearing up mid-February. We'll have online posts, we'll have signage, we'll team up with the colleges here, and really start mid-February all the way into beginning of April.
Okay, I'd like to make sure I'm aware of that, if you don't mind.
You want to come work
Make
too?
sure I'm aware of that. I got some people who want to get some jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. Please send them my way.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Now, back to the city manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. That's all we have for open session this morning. We do request that you have a closed session following this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
To read it.
Okay.
Is there a motion to enter into a closed session pursuant to the provisions of GS 143-318.11, A3 and A5 in order for City Council to, number one, consult with the city attorney regarding a potential legal claim, and number two, instruct staff regarding the city's negotiating position concerning the possible acquisition of real property? And we have a motion by Mr. Anderson and a second by Mr. Barnett. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I'm sorry, it has to be a roll call vote.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. All right. Mr. Robinbark, are you, yay. Mr. Anderson?
Yay.
Mr. Barnett,
Aye.
Mr. Spears,
Aye.
and Mr. Waddell? And I vote aye. So that passes unanimously. We'll stand in closed session.
Mayor Pro Tem, if you can give us just a second, it'd be about 5 minutes for Dylan to do his work.
Great, thank you. A second by Mr. Rivenbark. I'll have to do a roll call. Mr. Rivenbark? Mr. Anderson?
Yes, aye.
Mr. Barnett? Mr. Spears? Mr. Spears? Mr. Waddell?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Let me just write down who did that. I'm sure the clerk has that. Okay, at this point, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Well, we did that already with the roll call. So we now will be back in open session. Yes, I have a statement. The direction was provided to the city attorney concerning the handling of potential legal claims, and council instructed staff regarding the city's negotiating position concerning the possible acquisition of real property, and no other action was taken. So at this point, we will stand adjourned.